Well, the first challenge is to remember all the names. That's the first challenge from my perspective. Essentially, we did a fair amount of research. Obviously, we had the general squad that's been the sort of squad that we've had, and it's been in place for the last sort of period of time. But obviously for these two games, we've got an extended squad, which has given us a real opportunity, which hasn't probably happened in a very long time, to bring in and have a look at some of the players who are playing domestically and give them an opportunity on the international stage.
Tom, how does the breakdown of these camps look? Do the, say, WSL players head home after the first two? Is everyone in camp the whole time? How does it look?
Well, it's going to be a balance of both of those things. There'll be players playing in the initial two games, and then there'll be some going back, some staying on, and then players coming in for the second two games.
And how did you get Hayley Razzo, considering the other European players are sort of not available? Is it just she was injured and coming back?
What do you mean, how did we get her?
I couldn't see many other the European players, or are they? Did I miss that? Apologies.
That's okay.
Tom, how did you settle on 36 players for the squad? Was that always the number you were given, or?
There was a whole lot of stuff going on. If I'm being honest, there was a whole lot of juggling of numbers and fixing out squads and waiting to see who could play in what games and how long players were here. So we had to do that, and we did a lot of this stuff in conjunction with the coaches of the A-League women's teams, particularly in relation to looking at the domestic players.
Will the entire squad assemble in Queensland, or will some only link up with you in Victoria?
No, the entire squad, no, it won't work. We won't have 36 players with us for the whole camp. To be honest, that becomes too onerous and too unwieldy and impossible to work with. The numbers just become too big.
That was going to be my next question, which is how you're planning to work with that bigger squad of players. But if it's a smaller group, are you still able to use it as a sort of a bit of development camp as well around the big matches?
Well, you don't really get time, unfortunately, to call it a development camp, because players are literally in, you have a 1 day, maybe 2 days, and then you're playing games. It's really, in both circumstances, both in Queensland and here in Victoria, it's a case of getting players in and giving them opportunities to play in international matches. But actually, on-field time is going to be very limited.
Tom, can you give any guidance on the international stars that all the Matildas fans will be really keen to see? Which games they'll be playing before?
Well, we're still, we've got an idea of what players will be playing and what. And to be honest, it's a Matilda squad. I don't want to talk about stars and non-stars. We're looking here at a national team and a national team squad. And, one of the things that has been, I think, put out there for a long period of time is that there's been a severe lack of opportunity for players to get in and be seen at international level. So from my perspective, they're all Matilda stars, and when they go on the field, they're representing the Matildas. So whether it's cap number 1 or cap number 201, for me, it's not a question of stars and non-stars.
Can you explain how your conversations with Sam Kerr have been since we spoke to you last?
They've been good. I haven't actually spoken to her for a couple of weeks, so she's coming on well. Her rehab's going really, really, really well. As I say, when I spoke before, we talked about, so if we go back historically, when you had an ACL, you were tended to be out for 12 months. Things are getting a little bit better in rehab, but in reality, it's still probably a 12-month injury, and Sam's taken that time to come back, so to ensure that hopefully, when she comes back, she's going to be completely fit and healthy. She's going well.
There was the reference in I think in the podcast, that there might have been something else happening apart from the knee. Is there anything that you can lay out concern?
Absolutely not. I've heard, if you've heard that, I've heard. You're telling me something that I've not heard.
We've seen in previous years when we've had these sort of mixed squads of experience and youth, in one game it tended to be the experienced players playing together as a unit, and then the second game it was more inexperienced players playing together as a unit. What sort of approach do you take? Do you take that approach, or do you prefer a more blended one?
It's preferable. It's preferable to have a blended team. The reality is, whatever we play and whenever we play, we still want to put a team out that's going to win games. So it's getting the balance right between winning games, between putting strong teams out and then also giving players opportunity at the same time. It's hard for me to say right now, and it's really, it's not worth me worrying right now how things are going to look, because players have still got a couple of games in European Champions League and league competitions before they come into camp. So that's kind of something that we'll sort out when we come into camp and look at all the dynamics and injuries and all the other stuff that happens around the camp. But I don't have one set of, we're going to play what's perceived as the top team in this game and then the not top team in that game.
7 uncapped players in this squad. I know you've brought a lot of players through in the past. It must have been exciting to put in some of those emails, phone calls.
It is. It's always exciting to call players up, and it's always exciting for players to come in and get into the Matildas and the international environment for the first time. But it's also very important is that we're at the beginning of the, if you like, the 4-year cycle. And this is a critical time, so you need to take every opportunity that you can get to look at players and to see what you think, or what players you think have got the ability to step up to international level. And you often can't do that until you get them into camp. So that's why it's important that we make the most of these opportunities to have a look at some of these players that haven't had an opportunity up until now.
Players like, just off the top of my head, an Emily Gill and a Chloe Lagarde or Alex Chidiac, who've maybe fallen out of favour Matildas-wise or had injuries. What does it do having players like that clearly have that drive to get back in and maybe prove themselves right or prove people wrong?
Well, I think they've always wanted to be part of the squad, and through, whether it's been through injury or just non-selection, they just haven't been picked. And the Matildas is a very competitive squad. So I think those players have done enough to merit another opportunity to come into the team and be looked at again within the Matildas setup.
We'll just take a couple more from the floor and then we'll take a couple from Aaron online.
Tom, any names that didn't quite make it, maybe in the A-League, were very close?
There were several, like we had a big list of players, and we put out when we put out the list to the clubs, we put out an extended squad way and above the ones we picked from. And it did become very close. And to be honest, I haven't seen a lot of these players. So, it was touch and go between the players that we picked and some other ones that have just missed out.
So to clarify, you kind of took the recommendations of some of the coaches, picking maybe one or the other, who might have been more ready.
Say that again, sorry.
So you were working with the coaches of the clubs.
Yeah.
They might recommend certain players over others who they feel might have been more ready.
Yeah, they did. They know the players better than I do. So it's a combination of that. It's a combination of getting their feedback and their information. Also a combination of speaking with the national team staff, because obviously, our staff like Leah, Mel and Ray are across the younger players and the A-League women's players. So it's a combination of speaking to all of those players, myself looking at games and then making judgment calls from there.
Tommy, do you have any clarity about your time in this interim role?
I always get that. I was waiting for that. It usually comes out first. It's usually the first one. So here's the situation. So it's completely clear to everybody. I'm here as the interim coach for as long as that period. There is no set period. I'm here as long as the FA wants me to be here. And whatever that period is, and I'm be delighted to be there as long or as short as it is. So there's no set time on it. You might have to put up with me for some time to come. Who knows?
So you're very invested in this team?
Absolutely. I've taken on this job no differently than if I took on the job with a 4-year, 2-year, 5-year contract. I've taken on this job to coach the national team. And I'm doing the exact same job as now as I would do had I been in this job permanently.
Sorry guys, I'm just going to have to go online. Aaron, have you got a couple of questions?
Not quick enough. There you go. Just falling asleep.
Hi Aaron, are you there?
Shouldn't have technology around me. That's,
All right, we might just go back.
Tom, could I just ask, one player that a lot of fans have been following along with as a potential club is Kayla Morrison, but obviously she's got issues with her switch in eligibility from the US to Australia. Could you give us an update on that?
we're just waiting for FIFA. We put all the paperwork, as I believe, has all gone in. and it's a question of us just waiting to see when or if that comes back positively, and then we can move on from there. Yeah.
And any reason why Courtney Bones not in the squad?
Yeah, Courtney's just chosen at this stage not to be considered to be selected.
That was the case in the last window as well. So have you spoken to her since then?
Yeah, we've had a chat. We've had a chat before the last window, and we've had a chat within the last week. Yeah, she's good, but she's just not available for these upcoming games.
Can I just ask about Claire Polkinghorne? Obviously, you've got a lot of stuff to juggle, getting
Yeah.
the squads right, getting the most out of it. The big important matches, there's a farewell to a player who's been a big figure for the Matildas. How do you sort of juggle that around an important match and giving her the send-off?
That's a really good question. We have to actually sit down and work out the details of that. Interestingly, when we played in Germany, they had the same for their striker, Pop. Yeah, not good with names, as you just found out. And you know, they basically played her for 15 or 20 minutes and brought her off. You know, sit down and have a chat with Claire, and then we'll work out what the best thing is for her. Most importantly, what the best thing is for her. That's the key thing. I mean, she's given almost 20 years of service to this national team, being a stalwart in the Matildas for all of that time. And, you know, whatever she needs on the night is what we'll do.
So one of the things you talked about wanting to achieve with this squad was not only preparing them for the Asian Cup, but also get them focused on football again, enjoying their football again. And caught up with Steph a week ago, and she said you helped them rediscover their spark during the last window. How long do you feel in that process of getting them enjoying their football and focused again after the Olympics?
I don't think it's that hard. You know, players want to go out and play football. And whatever level you play at, you know, they kind of want the same thing. They want to go on the football field, they want it to be competitive, they want it to be active, and they want to be challenged. And, you know, as soon as you start doing that, then, and hopefully get the players buy-in in that, it's not that difficult. And that's kind of what we've gone back to.
Tom, you touched on this before, but how difficult is it to find opportunities for the younger players or the lesser-known Australian players in the current setup of things?
It's very difficult. You know, if I go back to my previous time in charge, when there wasn't really FIFA windows, all the players were in the country and you had access to them. You could do a huge amount more with fringe players, younger players, etc. I think what the key thing that we need to do moving forward is put things in place outside of, you know, just getting in for FIFA windows and playing games, because there's a lot of limitations around that. What we need to do is find other avenues to start to develop those players that we think are going to be Matildas or are just outside the squad, and give them opportunity and give them chances to work together. We do have an under 23 squad, but we've got to start doing stuff even underneath that as well. So we've got to start doing a lot more in that space, so that when we bring in players, they're ready to come in.
Any final questions? All right. Thanks
Good.
very much, everyone.
No, thank you.